January meeting of the Fayette County School Corporation's Board of School Trustees. Will you join me in a salute to the pledge of America flag? Are we being led by a student?
Yes.
Yes, okay, I'm sorry.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I did not know that we had a student in the lead, so thank you very much for doing that. I now need a motion to approve the agenda as submitted or amended.
Mr. President,
Mr. Dalton?
I move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Okay, do I hear a second? Okay, Mr. Hunt? The first item of business in this section is election of school board officers. What is your pleasure?
Mr. President, I'd like to
Wait,
nominate.
hang on. We didn't vote on the motion to approve the agenda. Sorry.
Oh, we didn't?
No. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, got that too. The secretary.
It looked like I was not paying attention. But I was.
All right, thanks for correcting me. All right, now we move into the election of school board officers for this year.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I would like to nominate the current officers as officers for this year.
Okay. The motion has been made that we keep the same set of officers. I will. That being myself as president, vice president is Warren, Lori secretary, and assistant is Ron.
I'll second that.
Second motion, okay. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And motion carried.
Congratulations, Rob.
Oh, thank you very much. Do I hear a motion that we adjourn this portion of this business meeting?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
All right. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. All right, this meeting is a little bit different tonight because we're having to cover 2 or 3 different grounds. So because we're based upon time and we have to follow a time guideline, the next section, which is actually a Board of Finance, is not scheduled to start until 6:40. So we're going to have to kill 5 minutes. So just enjoy conversation and get to know your neighbors. And then we'll move on to that portion, which will be very short, and then we'll be into the regular school board meeting. Okay? But we have to follow these times. Okay, we can move on in now to this other short thing that we need to move on tonight, which is the Board of Finance. So I'll call the Board of Finance meeting to order. And the first thing that we need to do is to elect a president and a secretary. Currently serving, Dave is president and Ron, I believe, is secretary. And do I hear any nominations for president?
Well, Mr. President, I would recommend that you keep the same officers for president and secretary of the finance committee.
All right, are you doing that in the form of a motion?
Yes, I move.
Okay. All right,
I
that,
guess that's more than a recommendation.
I'll second the motion.
and second, okay, did you get that? Okay. All right, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and the motion carries. Dave is on his way, but has not obviously gotten here, so I think that actually part B and C, Jane, you're doing that presentation, so you could go ahead and do that if you will.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Mr. Burchett. I will be brief. This is an annual requirement established by state statute that you meet as the Board of Finance electing the president and secretary, reviewing our investments and our investment policy. No action other than electing the president and secretary is required. In your packet, you will find a summary of 2013 bank balances at month end. Our cash and investments range between just under 18 million and just under $20 million at the end of any given month. We generally average between $3 to $5 million in our operating account at Main Source. The balance of the funds, generally $13 to $15 million, is invested through Fifth Third. I believe they were selected about 4.5 years ago to handle all of the investments for the corporation. All investments are secured. There are state prescribed instruments that are allowable for school corporations. They are of low risk, meaning they're certificates of deposit. They are other governmental instruments. So if you flip to the next page, you will see that our investments are in certificates of deposit, in bonds of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and then some additional certificates of deposit with the interest rates ranging from 0.30% up to 0.6%. Obviously, we're not seeing the growth in the certificate of deposit interest rates being paid as rapidly as we're seeing mortgage interest rates go up, but we're hopeful over the next year to see some improvement in those rates of return that we're receiving. The board has established policy 7.04, which is depository of funds and investments. Depositories of school corporation funds will be selected according to state regulation. The board encourages and authorizes the investment of any surplus funds at any time a surplus occurs. The treasurer shall make investments according to state regulations. I'm not recommending to Dr. Hodges or the policy committee that we proceed with any changes to the investment policy at this time. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Does anyone have any questions? Again, this is just a review. It really does not require any action.
It does not. It's
Right.
just a requirement by state statute that you meet and these items be discussed.
So are there any questions? Okay, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn this portion of the meeting.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr.
I
Hilton.
move to adjourn
Thank you,
this
Mr.
portion
Hilton.
of the meeting.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Mrs. Boyd, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carried. Okay, let's see, we can end this session, and we can now almost move into the next, but we have to wait a couple minutes. This meeting is now called to order, and first on our agenda is a school presentation. Mrs. McQuarrie, are you ready to present?
Yes, sir, yeah.
If you would you tell us who led the pledge? I did not get the name beforehand, as you saw, so I'm so
I'm
sorry
sorry.
that I didn't
Okay.
know that.
Sixth grader Alex Edwards. He's
Okay.
also going to be a part of our twofold presentation tonight. And at this time, the first part I want Miss Rachel Quorum, who is his teacher, to introduce Alex and why he's here tonight.
In a few minutes, Alex will present a couple paragraphs from a book he's recently written. I've had the pleasure to have Alex Edwards in my 6th grade class at Frazee. He is a wonderful student and a phenomenal writer. His craft and structure of writing far surpasses most 6th grade students. It doesn't matter whether he's writing expository or if he's writing descriptive. He catches the reader's attention and he holds that attention. He can visualize, you can actually picture what he is trying to get across when you're reading his papers. So I worked for literacy coordinator, and we were able to get him involved in a program through Butler University where they offer an accelerated writing program for students who are at a young age, but they're high level. So he's going to submit a story, and hopefully this summer he will be involved through Butler's program. And I guess his love for writing really sparked last year in 5th grade when he went to Washington, D.C. He went on the field trip, and he loves historical fiction. And he was able to not only just be able to picture it, but then he was able to see those real life documents and the places where they took place. And so he took his writing from just a few ideas. He takes actual details that happen in history and he adds fictional characters. His first story started out with a couple students who went on the trip. I think he started out with a story 20 to 30 pages, and his most recent story has been 85 pages. So in front of you have a copy of one of his stories, and his focus and dream is to be an author, and he would love to live in Washington, D.C. He said the level of patriotism he felt when he was there is what has brought him that. And I thought as a teacher it made me realize, we get so busy thinking we've got to get this done in class and this done, but then to see going on a trip outside of the school and to see what an impact it made on his life, and now he knows what he wants to do in the future. At 6th grade, I was just very impressed by that, and it made me stop and think, there's very important, valuable lessons through that. So I think with no doubt he can succeed. He has the drive, the determination. As you can see, he has the support from his family, and so I know that one day he can be an author. And as you'll see, he has it in front of you. Now, we don't want anyone copywriting, plagiarizing this. He's worked hard on this, and he may eventually turn this into a published piece. But he's going to read 3 short paragraphs he has from his chapters. Go ahead, Alex.
I will be reading some paragraphs from my book called Revolution's Hero. First will be from Chapter 2, Devastation. We were riding home from the meeting, and I was afraid of war all over the world with Britain. It is said that we are starting our own nation, and we will call it America. I have very high doubts that we will win the war that is coming. I am afraid I do not see the future nation. My father tells me that you have to work extra hard for something that will have a great outcome. I told him that men will die, blood will be shed, and families will be torn. Then I said, I am not ready for that to happen. He said, I understand, son, but with power comes tragedy. Next, I will be reading from Chapter 5, The Charlestown Fire. When I got to the Patriot base, I told them who I was, and they showed me to my tent. Then they said that I will be working alongside someone. I asked who he was. They said, meet him for yourself. Then a tall man came and reached his hand out for me to shake. His name was George Washington. And finally, Chapter 11, Britain's Final Stand. We exited the building, and the judge told me that I would be promoted to major. I thanked him as I pulled out my pistol to load it. When I put the bullet in the chamber, I saw my father's initials, and I slowly rubbed my thumb against the carbon. I let a tear run down my face as Washington put his hand on my shoulder and said that the reason that I should fight, that he is the reason I should fight, the reason to serve. He said that I needed to fight for him.
That's what makes you excited to be in education. He's a real good example for his peers, and he will make it someday. I can see that. He will go into journalism, and I see him doing some amazing things in writing. He's so expressive and really gives the details that we need to see. And he's a good example for other kids to follow when it comes to his writing pieces. Our second segment is very short. I want to share with you in order to improve where we are at Frazee. Our teachers are working very hard, and one thing, we have a good collaboration with our RTI team. And if you look at the sheet that's coming around, the first part shows you how many students in September were a part of our RTI interventions. And you can see that on the chart. And then we explain Tier 2 and Tier 3, what kind of interventions that we offer and provide for our students every day. At the bottom is a chart that I've come up with that shows students who passed I-STEP reading in 2013. And according to STAR, an assessment that we use for progress monitoring, of those students who's predicted to pass in 2014, of course we have quite a few weeks, we hope that even increases by that time. And then we do the same thing for math. We also show acuity, who predicts, which that test also shows prediction of those who have passed reading and math. I just wanted to share that we are working hard. No matter where the state wants to say that we are working hard with the same school that we've always been. We have some challenges that we're working through. We're working on ways to involve our parents in a greater way, working with their children and supporting them, and being involved with our everyday activities that we have at school. And I'm very proud of my staff and their hard work, and this is a very big part of what we're about. So thank you.
Mrs. McCreary, thank you. Thank you for the students and for the parents again and others that came to support the student presentation tonight. So you're welcome to stay, but if you'd like to leave, this would be an appropriate time maybe for you to do that. But thanks again for being here.
And Alex. Can I get your autograph on the book?
Get used to that.
I bet your penmanship doesn't stay that way. I appreciate that. I got the valuable copies. First edition.
Very first one.
All right, moving on to our next item. Are there any patron comments on tonight's agenda items? Seeing none, we will then move to the consent agenda, which includes approval of minutes from the regular business meeting of 12/10/13 and the executive session of 12/10/13. The personnel report, the approval of December 2013 claims, numbers 33934 to number 34264. The appointment of the corporation treasurer and deputy treasurer. The appointment of Cindy Newton to the Fayette County Public Library Board. The appointment of Brian Jennings to the Fayette County Area Planning Commission. The 2014 Conflict of Interests. And acceptance of donations, being a grant valued at $339 from Duke Energy to CHS, and a 1996 Ford Ranger donated by Eugene Lukey to WTCC. Do I hear a motion to accept the consent agenda or to pass the agenda?
I will make that motion, Mr.
I'll
President.
second the motion.
Ms. Savoy made the motion and Mr. Hilton second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carried. Now we move into our action items for the evening, being just one, which is a personnel report, and I believe Dr. Hodges is covering for Dr. Bayer, who could not be here this evening.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. President. I will try to carry on. Steve has set the bar very high, but I'll do my best to try to meet those expectations. But we have a recommendation for employment this evening. Certified staff April Kivett, intense intervention teacher at Maplewood, support staff Luann Harrison, executive secretary to transportation and maintenance, and And extracurricular, Daryl Drew as the assistant swim coach. Those are the recommendations for your consideration this evening.
Board, what is your pleasure on the personnel report?
I move to accept the personnel report.
Thank you, Mr. Hilton. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hunt. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carried. Our discussion items, the first item listed is the 2014 State of the Schools with Dr. Hodges.
We were supposed to have a trust, I think that on hold agenda there.
Yeah.
We were supposed to approve the ECIST trust.
I don't know, I just printed this off before I came, but whatever needs to be done is fine. So what did I skip here? Okay, I need to back up. I had an old copy of an agenda here. So we do need to take action on the ECIST trust agreement. Dr. Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. President. The board, in your package, you had some information. Basically, what we need for you to do tonight is to adopt the resolution that basically approves the amended agreement. Part of the amended agreement is our trust attorney has indicated that local school boards need to appoint the specific voting members to that board. So the agreement does indicate that the superintendent, in that case myself, will serve as a representative on the board. It also indicates that the union president or designee would serve as a representative. Sean Curtis has served in that capacity for some time, and so the resolution would appoint Sean Curtis as a representative to the trust board, and it also provides some authorization for the superintendent to sign some documents as well as the board president. So with that being said, if you have questions, we'll try to answer those, but the recommendation is that you adopt the resolution as presented to you.
What is your pleasure regarding the ECIST trust agreement?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr.
I
Taylor.
move that we accept the ECIST trust agreement.
I'll second the motion.
And Mr. Hilton seconds. Any discussion?
It's pretty perfunctory.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. Now we're ready for discussion items. The 2014 State of Schools, Dr. Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. President. Passing around a copy of the PowerPoint for you. Taking just a minute to get set up. This is my fourth State of the School address. And we have a lot of good things to share with you this evening. Talk about who are we. What you have in front of you is a chart showing our ADM enrollment. ADM counts kindergarten students as half. It's a very important number that's used on a lot of documents that we file with the state of Indiana. You can see back in it's not necessarily important you'll be able to read all the numbers, it's the trend that I think is important. Back in 1996, our ADM enrollment was 4,200 students. This fall, our enrollment was 3,522. As you'll notice, from about 2008, we've been in steady decline. This fall, as we continue to look at those numbers, after the school year started, we were losing some additional students, and we were concerned as to what was happening, why that would be the case. Some speculated it was because of vouchers and people going to private schools, or was it because people were moving out of state, or where is it? The private schools, we've kind of traded some students. Some students went to private school, we got some students back, but something that seems to be increasing a little bit in numbers is homeschool. Not homeschool at the high school level, but homeschool at the elementary level as well at the high school. So that will be something I think in the future that we may want to keep a watch on. This is the free and reduced price lunch chart. For the first time since I've been presenting this, our numbers have gone down just a little bit. The red bar indicates free lunch, and the green bar is the reduced price lunch, and you can see the reduced has kind of bounced around a little bit. where the overall combination of those has been high. We this year are at 64% combined. The state average is 49%, so you can see we are quite a bit above the state average. High schools across the state kind of keep these numbers depressed. For some reason, high school students don't typically file for free and reduced price lunch. Connersville High School free and reduced price number is about 53%. We do have one elementary school that is up at 85%. So I don't think there's any real surprises there, as you're fully aware of the economy that we have here. Departmental reports. W-2s issued in 2012 is 892. The last time I gave this report, we were over 1,029. That's a loss of 136. Does anybody want to venture a guess as to why we've had such a significant drop? And this is W-2s. Everything from a substitute bus driver, substitute custodian, every employee all the way up through elementary school coaches, the superintendent, school board, all the way through. But our number's down 135, maybe 136. Anybody want to venture a guess? Well, it's calendar year 2012. That was the first calendar year where Chartwell's was with us. And we talk about Chartwell's employees not being our employees, being their employees, and this is a reflection. That's not all of it, but that's why most of the decline. Total expended across all funds, just a little bit over $44 million. We are the #1 employer in the county, and we do spend a lot of money. We are a very big business. Transportation, we transport about 2,600 students each day, and that's almost 500,000 students on an annual basis. We drive about 5,200 miles each day. That does not include field trips, does not include athletic events. With those being excluded, we're driving, as you can see, over 500,000 miles on an annual basis. I think we can safely say we're the largest transportation industry here in Fayette County. Meals served, we served just a little over 4,000 meals a day. Over 750,000 meals last year. That's up over 50,000 from the previous year. And Siobhan has already made the presentation too. We talked about our summer food truck meals. We serve over 12,900 meals. Let's talk about finances for a little bit. As you may recall, the reason we have two different colored bars in these stacked graphs, the blue portion is what comes from the state. The red portion is what was part of the federal stimulus dollars that flowed from the state to us. And as you can see, 2013, that stopped. Probably the troubling piece to look at that is the blue bar didn't get bigger. It kind of went down a little bit. The numbers are hard to read, I know in the audience. It's about $25 million, and that is down about $500,000 from 2012. This number is primarily driven by enrollment, by ADM. This chart talks about expenditures, and there again, the red reflects expenditures out of the federal stimulus dollars, and the blue is what comes from the state dollars. And I guess the good news on this, the expenditure, that last bar, is almost $24 million, which is less than our revenue. So the good news is we are living within our means. This chart, for the first time in a couple years, has shown a decline. It's a stacked graph that shows you the combination of salaries and fringe benefits that we pay. I shared with you back when I was taking school finance, they told us a healthy budget would be at about 80% total of salary and fringe benefits. We have been at 90%. This year we've dropped back to 88%. And part of the reason that we're down a little bit, but there again, as you recall, over the last couple years that we have had some very senior staff members retire, and we've not replaced them with like kind. We've replaced those with less experienced folks, and I think that helps bring that number down. Let's talk about student achievement. Our goal being 80% of all students tested will meet or exceed state standards on ISTEP Plus. And this is mathematical achievement over time. And this is a graph that I really like to show. It shows the great progress that we've made. I can say for the 7th testing cycle in a row, we're above the state average. And as you can see, prior to about 2007, we couldn't say that. And we have consistently done that. Our total pass rate was 85%. The state's at 83%. Now, as we talk about these graphs, I want to remind you that when ISTEP was going on last spring, There was a significant failure on the part of CTB McGraw-Hill to deliver what they promised that they would deliver. The state has gone through and they have analyzed all of the tests. They indicate what we have is accurate. But I suggest to you that maybe what we see is not truly an accurate reflection of the performance and achievement of our students, but it's what we have. The whole state was in the same, kind of in the same situation, maybe different depending on how the testing cycle went, but enough on that. That's mathematics. I think we should be very proud of that. English language arts follows a very similar path. Again, we're above the state average. Our pass rate's at 82%. The state's at 80%. We have kind of hit a little bit of a plateau, if not backed off just a little bit, but we still are above the state average on that. A graph that I've just recently, in the last year or so, started showing is passing both. As we talk about, some students pass math, some students pass English language arts, but the higher bar is to pass both of those together, and as you can see, we're at 75% passing both, and the state's at 74% in passing both. Just to share with you the growth that we've made, I think this graph really is pretty significant. This is where we were as student achievement was in the year 2006-2007. Why do I choose that? That's the year that I came here, and this is where our achievement was. This is where our achievement is today. The red line up there is 80%. We had said that that was our goal to pass in English, language arts, and mathematics, and you can see that we have made great progress over time. I want to talk to you about growth, but before I do that, I have a couple slides I want to show you that recognizes that the growth model that the state is using has some problems with it. The General Assembly last year passed House Enrolled Act 1427 that says not later than November 15, 2013, the state board shall establish new categories or designations of school performance. They're working on it. But what I'm going to show you here in a little bit is still based on the old, flawed reasoning and thought process. I was surprised to hear this. I did have the opportunity to hear Derek Riedelman from the Indiana Chamber of Commerce in his presentation. He said, labels are bad if not accurate or fair. Currently, referring to the growth model that we have, they are not accurate, nor are they fair. So, with that being said, let me share with you where our grades were according to the state. I put up there 2012 grades. In 2013, you'll notice that we have 3 A's in 2013. Congratulations to Connersville High School. They earned an A for the first time under this methodology. Fayette Central received an A, and again, they received all of the bonus points possible in this growth pattern. We congratulate them. And Maplewood also received an A as well. Fayette County School Corporation earned a B. And you can see the rest of them. One of the things that I think people really struggle with the current methodology, one, it's hard to recreate these numbers and get all the data collected. But when you see drops from like an A to a C, or you see 2 or 3 grades being dropped or 2 or 3 grades being earned, it kind of makes you wonder what could happen that dramatically to cause that to happen. I will tell you, you probably read sometime this fall about a private school in Indianapolis that got the former state superintendent of public instruction a little bit of trouble because they talked about benchmarking that school. That school earned an A last year. It earned an F this year. I'm not picking on them, but if you have a system that's supposed to be helping you understand growth, understand your accountability, and I doubt that there's been much significant happen in that building to cause them to go from an A to an F. I think there's problems in that. Hopefully, with House Enrolled Act 1427, that we'll get that straightened out. Don't know what the grades will look like next time around, but hopefully we'll have a little bit more confidence in what that says. Students will read at grade level before they leave 3rd grade, and we were at 88% this year. Last year we were at 85%. We've made some progress. The state average for public schools was 91%. Our goal was 90%, I believe, so we still have some work to do in that area. We say students will be competent in math standards before they leave 4th grade. And here's our 4th grade I-STEP, and you can see we are the red bar, the state's the blue bar, and you can see some nice growth there. Fayette County was at 87%, the state was at 84%. And we were at 80% last year. So we showed some nice growth in 4th grade mathematics. Every student will make at least 1 year's progress every year. Again, even though we've recognized that some of the metrics that go into determining this are questionable, this model is designed so that on a statewide basis, a third of the students will show low growth, a third of the students will show high growth, and a third of the students will show typical growth. If you go to the website and look for this, you won't find those lovely blue lines. I drew those in myself, so they may be a little crooked. But the purpose of those is to show you the 33% and the 66% to kind of give you an idea what range we should be in if we're experiencing typical growth. The yellow line that grows across kind of the top of the graph, that's the pass point for the state of Indiana. The big blue dot is Fayette County School Corporation. Our growth, you can see that we're just right at that average piece. What you would like to see is that dot be higher above the yellow line and farther to the right. This is the corporation growth piece. This is our schools in mathematics, their growth rate. You can see that we have one school that is right on that 33%, and you can see one that's above that 66% line. They were actually at just about 70% on that. So that's really great growth. In English Language Arts, same methodology. You can see we're just pretty much right smack dab in the middle. When we plot all of our schools, you can see that all of our schools are in that typical growth range. This stacked bar graph again talks by grade level, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. The red portion of the graph are students that showed low growth. The green are those that showed typical growth, and the blue those that showed high growth. Across the state, if we would do this again, we would expect that those would be a third, and a third. So I think the goal for us is to have that red lower than 33%. And as you can see, we have some challenges there. I call your attention to 7th grade mathematics. That number, in case you can't read it, says 52%. That says 52% of our students showed low growth. And I would like to tell you that that's a real anomaly. The fact of the matter is, the last 2 years, that has been our largest red bar that we've shown. I think last year it was, I thought I wrote it down, I think it was in the 40%. It wasn't quite as pronounced as this, but that's an area that we are looking at and obviously needs some attention. English Language Arts looks better from this growth model standpoint, but we still have some of the red bars that are above 33%. And again, this is a purely statistically driven model that is designed so that a third of the students will show low growth. But it's the best we have. And as I've shared, I think it does point out some areas for us that we have opportunities for growth and where we may need to spend some time and energy. Connersville High School will have a graduation rate that exceeds the state average and a dropout rate that is below the state average. And there you see it. The red bar is us. The blue bar is the state, and you can see for the first time we've gone past the state. You'll also notice that top line is 90%, and that bar is above 90%. Our 2012 graduation rate was 92.1%. We congratulate the high school on a job well done. They've worked very hard at that. The state average was 88%. The challenge is going to be to try to keep that above the state average. When you look at the lower bars down at the bottom, they deal with dropouts, and as we've talked before, dropouts added to graduates don't equal 100%. There's some other things that go into that. The state average was about 6%. Connersville High School was at 3.8%. This is a part of the presentation where I try to provide for you some direction as to where we need to be headed by the state. And I thought that this sign was pretty appropriate for the things that we're hearing out there as to where we're going. I know there are times that you think I may be a little cynical about some of the things, but what I'm going to share from you are not original thoughts of mine. They are things that I've picked up from presentations by folks who have been hired, some by School Boards Association, some by the Superintendent's Association, to make presentations to us. Here's some phrases and terms that you may have heard. Race to the top. And the question that was raised in the seminar I was at is, to the top of what? And what happens when you get to the top? But you've heard that terminology. Another one is Common Core. One of the interesting things about Common Core, we're not quite sure if Indiana is a Common Core. They're not Common Core. We were with the coalition of states that said we were going to adopt that. Now we're not quite so sure we're going to do that. If we withdraw from the Common Core, we will be the only state in the union that does withdraw from the Common Core. And then the question is, what do we have and where do we go with that? This next one, college and career ready. The gentleman that was making this presentation said 53% of recent college graduates are either unemployed or underemployed and living in the basements of their parents. And so he said maybe our goal shouldn't be college and career ready, maybe it should be more along the lines of staying out of your parents' basement readiness as we move forward. What's the next state endorsed assessment going to be? I don't know that we know the answer to that. A couple years ago, we spent a lot of time talking about PARCC and unwrapping what those questions would look like and how different those questions are when you compare them to what we have in ISTEP. We formally withdrawn from PARCC. We're not a PARCC state anymore. When Superintendent Ritz was running for election, she talked about Smarter Balanced as being an assessment that might be more appropriate for us. I haven't heard her talk about that in recent days. I don't know where we're going. What I do know is that we are going to be using ISTEP for 3 more years. Now, it's not ISTEP as we've always known it. There will be some modifications to ISTEP to try to be more Common Core-like in its presentation, but we're not quite sure exactly what that's going to be. But staying with ISTEP for another 3 years creates yet another problem. The waiver that we filed with No Child Left Behind said we were leaving ISTEP behind, only now we're not. So what does that mean going forward? I don't know the answer to that, hence the sign that I showed just a little while ago. Well, let me see if I can clear this up. There are a lot of conflicting voices out there giving some mixed messages as to how we need to be preparing our students. Probably the most prevalent is our governor and the state superintendent of public instruction. I think some of their disagreements have been very public. It's been out in the open. They are not working together well yet. And it really goes beyond just the creation of the Center for Education and Career Initiative, the CECI, which appears to be the governor's school board as opposed to the State Board of Education, which is having some impact on what the Department of Education, the State Department of Education, is able to do. Who's going to be setting educational policy in the state of Indiana? I think the thing that you need to take into consideration, it's not just a political battle that's being fought. It's a real philosophical issue that we're dealing with. I think the question is, should Indiana schools be turned over to private, out-of-state, for-profit businesses? Or should we stay the course of our earliest base of publicly funded public schools for all, where local control actually means something? I think that's part of the debate. Who's going to win? Not sure. There are some more voices being heard in the education arena. We've talked about the Arne Duncans and the Tony Bennett's, the Jeb Bush, to some extent Bill Daggett. That's really kind of the course that we had been on. There have been some voices that are way off to the extreme left, folks like Jonathan Kozol and Alfie Kohn that have some interesting ideas, but they don't seem like they gained a lot of traction. But Diana Ravitch, who's been talking a lot over the last few years, She seems to be gaining a lot of support, and some of what I shared with you this evening comes from a gentleman by the name of Yang Zol. I hope I pronounced his voice right. But they're challenging what had been becoming the status quo. Where are we going to be? Be interesting to see. I don't know that we know the answer to that. We hear a lot about how American students compare to other students across the nation. We talk about the TIMSS test, the Trends in International Mathematics and Science Study. Yang Zol presented this to us, and I thought it was really kind of fascinating, where he said when you look at students from Asian countries, their test performance is really high, but their confidence level is low. When you look at American students, their confidence level is very high, but their performance is lower. They're talking about, is there really a connection between performance and confidence? I don't know the answer to that, but I just thought that was an interesting proposal. Project-oriented learning versus project-based learning. When we talk about 21st century skills, there have been a number of schools across the nation, primarily funded by the Bill Gates Foundation, I think, that have opened new tech high schools, new tech schools based heavily into technology, obviously, dealing with projects, project learning, more group learning. That's been interesting to watch. I'm not sure how applicable that is for us. A new term that new for me that just began to resonate with me was project-oriented learning. And to me, what that project-oriented learning means, it's really more like those park-based questions. Well, Bill Daggett, who's gets a lot of credit for the rigor and relevance scale that maybe we've talked about some in the past, but he talks about solving real-world, unpredictable problems. Take the information that you have. Here's something that doesn't have a predictable outcome. What do you think is going to happen with this? How is this going to be resolved? To me, that's project-oriented learning, and I think that's the direction we may be headed, but I think that's something that's going to take some more thought and study on our part, at least on the part of the superintendent. So what are we to do? We can talk about the problems, talk about all the confusion, or we can stay the course and do the best we can to adequately prepare our students for an uncertain future. Here are the things that I'm recommending that we do. Refine and improve the evaluation process, primarily the RISE. We've lived through it 1 year. We've been through the whole gamut of that, and we've learned some things. We're going through that again. We are working with other employee groups to come up with similar kinds of evaluations that are performance-based. We need to continue to do that. Continue the path towards Common Core. Whether we formally adopt that, whether we adopt the Indiana Common Core, or we come up with some other name, the bottom line is this is the direction that we need to be heading. As I shared with you earlier, ISTEP is going to be including more Common Core type of questions in the assessment piece of that. So we need to continue that path that we're on. It's still good stuff. Continue technology upgrades. If there's one facet of what we do at Fayette County School Corporation that I think we've fallen behind over time, and that is in technology, and we're working hard to make up and correct those things, and we need to continue that course. I think we just received a grant, did we not, in the technology area that you'll be hearing more about that. We're making progress. We need to continue working that way. SAT performance, I mentioned it last year, talked a little bit about if that's a true measure of rigor that's happening throughout our system, we're not performing as well there as we would like for us to, I'd like for us to see do. So we are working on that, but that's still something that needs to be on our radar. I wrote be aware of the General Assembly activities, but as I rehearsed this, it kept coming out. Beware, not be aware, but beware. Probably both of them fits. The State of the State address is going on even as we speak, so we may learn a little bit more about what the governor has in mind for education for our state, but I think he's been pretty clear on his thoughts. The privatization, the vouchers, really making it more difficult, I think, for public schools to operate. You can see what's happening to our revenue base. We are in a situation where we have declining enrollment. that doesn't help us, but that's a concern. But I have a bigger concern, and I mentioned it briefly, I think, at the last board meeting, and that's the conversation going on about the elimination of personal property tax. And that's meant to help stimulate business or attract business. And I think that's a good and noble thing to attract business to the state, but the question needs to be asked to what expense to other entities within the state. We ran some numbers. It looks like our hit on the property tax caps is about $990,000. That's $990,000 lost revenue that, as a homeowner, you probably appreciate the fact that you don't pay as much taxes. We who survive on taxes, that's not such a good thing. But if the personal property tax goes through, we're estimating that we'll lose an additional $530,000 on top of the almost $1 million that we lost. But as they say on the TV commercials, but wait, there's more. As our revenue declines, our rates go up. As our rates go up, more people hit the property tax caps. So we can raise our rates to whatever we want it to be, but when you hit the property tax cap, you just lose that revenue. So if this goes through, this is not good news. I was with a group of people last Friday who seemed to have a little bit more of an inside track than I did. The belief is that all personal property tax won't be forgiven in one fell swoop. That's the good news. The bad news is they may start phasing that in with everything new coming in. So, as they used to say in one of the oil filter commercials, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. Here's another concern along with this. Revenue, there's only a certain amount of revenue that the state's going to collect. And there's only a certain amount of revenue that the state's going to dedicate to public schools. And if the combination of property tax caps and the personal property tax loss shrinks that pool for education, then you start pulling out vouchers for private and parochial schools. The amount of money that's left for public schools continues to decline. It gets back to the question, who's better equipped to provide education for the public? Local control folks, people like you who are elected by our constituents, or some private for-profit company from somewhere outside of state who's really not necessarily focused on the student, they're focused on the bottom line. That, I'm afraid, is where we're headed. Well, let me end on yes, that's a positive. Let me end on a couple positive notes here. Employee health clinics. You approved a document for the East Central Indiana School Trust. We've been working very hard, and I'm very optimistic that sometime this spring we'll be opening up employee health clinics for our folks here at Fayette County Schools who are on our school health insurance. We will have a clinic in Connersville where our employees will be able to go and get routine services at no out-of-pocket expense to them. That's huge. We think that's a great plus. We have some of those operating in the trust. We expect to have ours up and operating, as I said, this spring. That's a real exciting thing. Let's talk a little bit about what's really important. I'm going to share what I shared with the teachers on opening day. I read a book this summer called Spectacular Things Happen Along the Way. It was by Brian Schultz. He was a teacher in Chicago. Growing up in Northwest Indiana, Cabrini Green means something to me. I don't know that it means something to everybody, but in the book it says Room 405, which was Mr. Schultz's class at the Carr Community Academy, and that's a fictitious name. These are real kids. It is a real classroom. They changed all the names and everything to protect the innocent, but it says Carr Community Academy, smack up against Cabrini Green, the public housing project with a national reputation for gang activity, drugs, street violence, unemployment, and dysfunctional families. Cabrini Green has all the stuff of which failure is made, and it often delivers door to door. What brings kids to class? What brings kids to Mr. Schultz's class? Without a doubt, the reason is Brian Schultz. He's demonstrating the impossible to measure impact of a teacher who cares about, listens to, and genuinely respects kids. teachers inspire the smallest hearts to grow big enough to change the world. That's my report. Thank you for the privilege of serving Fayette County School Corporation as your superintendent.
Thank you, Dr. Hodges. Does anybody have any questions or comments, concerns at this time? A lot of info there. Anyone? All right, then we'll move on to the public hearing on the superintendent's contract. And Mr. Taylor, we'll turn that over to you first. Yes. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry. We've had committee meetings over the last month or so, and we've talked about the superintendent's contract and come to some conclusions and some pieces of agreement. I think there'll be one more committee meeting before we finalize what we're going to recommend to the board.
Okay. I believe that I can open this now for public comments. Does anyone in the audience have a question or concern or anything they'd like to voice concerning the superintendent's contract? Hearing none, then I'll close the hearing part of this and we'll move on. Are there any public comments from those in the audience wishing to make the board aware of suggestions, ideas, or comments? May I address the board at this time? Seeing, I think that almost everyone here are school employees, so. Okay.
Just keep him.
Pardon?
Just keep him.
Yeah, so there you go. All right, then we'll move into our report items. Superintendent's discussion groups, anyone? Seeing none. Principal director reports? Seeing none. Director of personnel report? Dr. Hodges, do you have anything more to add? No, okay. Director of finance report? Ms. Keller?
Thank you, Mr. Burchett. Just a couple of items. I'd like to let the full board know that our audit by the State Board of Accounts for the period of July 1, 2011 through June 30th, 2013 has been completed. Mr. Burchett attended the exit conference with the State Board of Accounts. There were no federal findings related to our federal grants. There were 2 comments that were placed in the audit report of the entire corporation, and those were related specifically to extracurricular accounts. Basically, we've got a clean bill of health. So I wanted to share that. In addition to that, the 2014 budget has been approved by the Department of Local Government Finance. I'll share information more in depth later, but a couple of significant items are the assessed valuation of the county, which makes up the tax base for the school corporation as well, was down $19 million. That's significant to our funds that are driven by the rate applied to the assessed valuation, in particular capital projects. Took a nice, pretty good size hit this year. And we had to cut several items out of the capital projects budget that had been approved. In addition to that though, the overall tax rate for Fayette County schools dropped 4 cents this year. So I believe in looking at the other larger entities, the county and the city, their rates had to go up this year. Our rate did drop 4 cents. So, thank you, Mr. Burchett.
Thank you. Okay, next is our assistant superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Burchett. I just wanted to say we're glad to be back in school again. and the weather is letting us go on with our business of teaching, and to give a special thanks to I know the administrators and the teachers. They had to do a lot of rescheduling. We finally got finals finished, I think. Yes, yesterday. We started a new semester about a week late. So there's been a lot of juggling and a lot of extra effort on their part to get us going up into our second semester. So just a little FYI, and trying to keep everyone informed about report cards and things like that.
Thank you. Superintendent's report?
Well, it's a dangerous thing to start thanking people because I'm going to miss somebody, I'm afraid, but I think I appreciate what Dr. Reiki talked about with inclement weather, but I also want to commend our custodians, maintenance staff for the work that they did to keep sidewalks plowed as best they could and keep parking lots cleaned off so that we could have school when the temperatures and the snow would allow us to do that. Appreciate the work that our bus drivers do. They do a great job all the time, but especially on these slick roads, they do a great job. And I want to thank Jane Oakley for her insight and input on helping make that tough choice as to whether or not we're going to have school. Anybody can get on TV when it's, 20 below zero and 15 inches of snow saying, I think schools ought to close. It's when it's those other times where it gets a little tougher, and I appreciate Jane's help on that. I want to congratulate Janie on just what was an outstanding audit report. And also, I think tonight we had some committee assignment volunteers for that. If you could get those sheets to Cindy before you leave tonight, I'd appreciate it. I think that's all that I got.
Okay, well, then we move into for the good of the cause. Does anyone have a comment they'd like to share from the board? I likewise was going to add, Jane, thank you so much for you and your department and the great report that we got. That's just great for our corporation, so thank you so much.
Thank you for my job. I really like what I do. I'm working for the school, so it's a pleasure.
Good.
We need to thank Duke Energy and Gene Luby for the cash in the truck. Our community always pulls through and do what they can for the corporation.
Anyone else? With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Taylor, Carl Gilpin second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the meeting is adjourned.